Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank the Almighty Allah who allow us to have this moment in a good health and excellent condition despite the pandemic issue we are currently facing today. I am Nabila Izzatul Muslimah, your master of ceremony of the international webinar today with the topic Suku Innovation, How Far Have We Gone? This webinar is the part of 59th anniversary of the Faculty of Economic and Business at Erlangga University, Indonesia. Before we get into the webinar, let me say Happy Islamic New Year 1442 Hijriah for all of us today. Without any further, let's start by singing National Anthem and then Quran recitation Al-Hasr 18 by Mr. Saifin.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير تعملون ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Thank you for the beautiful Quran recitation and national anthem. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are glad to appreciating and welcoming 501 participants who came from 11 countries, including India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Bangladesh, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Uganda, and the last one is Indonesia. After the presentation section by our speaker, there will be an opportunity for participants to ask a question to our speaker. The participant must write down their name, affiliation, address to, and short question on the text message. Moderator will choose the question and ask the speaker directly. The participants are allowed to ask one question only. During the presentation, all the participants should turn off the microphone to maintain the conducive lecture for all of us. For your information, this webinar is hosted by Center for Innovative Islamic Investment and Capital Market in collaboration with Faculty of Economic and Business Erlangga University Indonesia and Sulaiman Dawood School of Business, Lahore University of Management Sciences, Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to listen the opening speech delivered by Dean Faculty of Economic and Business. The excellent participant, please welcome Professor Dr. Dian Agustia.
Okay. Thank you, Nabila.
You're welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah God Almighty, who for His grace the preparation for international webinar Suku Innovation, how far have we gone, run smoothly. I would like to express my sincerest gratitude for your participation in this seminar. I would also like to convey my gratitude for our honor speaker, Dr. Syed Aun Rasa Rizki from Sulaiman Dawood School of Business, Lahore University of Management Science, Pakistan. Dr. Nisful Laila from Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Erlangga, and Dr. Sulistyo Ruskianto as the moderator. I would express my high appreciation to committee from the Department of Islamic Economic Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Erlangga, and Center of Innovative Islamic Investment and Capital Market, Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Erlangga. As we might already know, I was among Quranic verses and several sayings of Prophet Muhammad indicate the great importance of Sharia financing. Sukuk as an Islamic financing instrument has been growing significantly in the recent year. There is significant interest from both the government and business organization to use sukuk as a potential source of long-term financing. This seminar is arranged to give us insight on the most recent development of sukuk innovation. I hope all of you have abundant opportunity to discuss this emerging matter. I am confident that we individually and collectively will gain valuable lessons. I hope your discussion will be both productive and enjoyable. Thank you. I am Prof. Dian Agustia, Dean of Faculty Economic and Business, Universitas Erlangga. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Nabila.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Dian Agustia, for the opening speech. Next, we are going to hear about Dr. Nisful Laila's speech. Please welcome Dr. Nisful Laila.
Nabila, you mean presentation? It should be Pak Sulistya dulu as a moderator.
Oh, as the moderator. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, before that, let's continue to the next agenda. I'm so sorry for. Okay. Before that, I would like to say happy birthday to Professor Dr. Diana Gustia. May Allah bless your soul and have you full of blessing and everlasting happiness in life.
Thank you.
We are now continuing to our meeting to the next agenda. So I would like to invite our moderator webinar today. Please welcome Dr. Sulistia Ruskianto.
Okay, thank you very much, Nabila, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to all of you. Happy Hijri New Year, and we wish you a better achievement and good health in this new year. As introduced before, this webinar is organized by Center for Innovative Islamic Investment and Capital Market, or we shorten as CICAM, in collaboration with Faculty of Economic and Business, Universitas Airlangga Surabaya, Indonesia, and Sulaiman Daud School of Business, Lahore University of Management Science, Pakistan. Before we start our seminar, allow me to briefly introduce CICAM to all of you. CICAM is a research institute under Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Airlangga. Our focus is to do innovative research on building, integrating, promoting, and ensuring best practice for the development of Islamic capital market. Our vision is to internationally recognized center on the development of Islamic investment and capital market. This vision will be achieved through 3 strategic missions. First is to develop innovative Islamic investment and capital market models through excellent research collaborations. Second, to assist our client in implementing research-based innovation into Islamic capital market best practice. And third, to promote Islamic finance as a solution for world in financial problem. Our main product and services are facilitating collaborative research in the area of Islamic capital market. Therefore, we invite you to all participants to join CICAM as the research fellow. As we have research, if you have a research proposal of any idea about Islamic capital market, please don't hesitate contact us. We also provide consultation and assistance for our client to prepare and build their capacity in best practice implementation. So if you are a professional in industry, you also can collaborate with us. We also organize to this seminar to promote Islamic finance and capital market. If you need more information about CICAM, please contact us through this email. Okay, today we have 2 excellent speakers. First is Dr. Nisful Laila and Dr. Said. Now, before we start our webinar, I would like to introduce our speaker. The first speaker is Dr. Nisful Laila. Dr. Nisful is the PhD holder from Universitas Airlangga, master holder from University of New South Wales, Australia. Today, she will deliver topic on innovation in government sukuk, case study of Indonesia. Hopefully, Indonesia's experience on government sukuk can inspiring other countries who want to implement Islamic finance. I invite Dr. Nisful to give her speech. So, Dr. Nisful, time is yours now.
Thank you, Dr. Sulis, for a nice introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Allahumma shalli ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajmain. Amma ba'du. Honorable Dean, our beloved Dean, Professor Dian Agustia, thank you for joining us, Ibu, and give a speech. And also happy birthday for Ibu Dian.
so much.
This is for you. What a coincidence. And Happy New Year for all of us. And also my dear colleague, Dr. Syed Aun Razaris, it's been a long time not see you. Last time, I think last year, you came to Erlangga, yeah?
Yes.
Nice
Inshallah.
to see you again.
Thank you. Inshallah, we'll see you very soon.
Amin, amin, amin. And also for all dear participants, welcome to this seminar. Ibu Dina, I hope you can help me to share the material. And this session, I will share about my thought about innovation of a sovereign suku or government suku. This is part of my, the part of this material. Actually, I've been presented in IIUI, Islamabad University, last 2 years, I think, in Pakistan. And yes, innovation in government suku, case study in Indonesia. Next. This is the outline. Maybe I will take only 20 or 30 minutes, I hope. And the overview, the types of sovereign suku, the sovereign suku structure a little bit, and then the innovation of sovereign suku in Indonesia. Okay. For those who came from other countries, welcome to Indonesia. And this is the map of Indonesia. We have four biggest island, A, B, C, D. And we are number 4, the biggest population countries. And also unfortunately, our GDP is not so high as you see here. And our exchange rate is $1 right now is about 14,238 rupiahs. When I was in Pakistan, they are quite shocked when I tell them that $1 is equal this amount. But right now, even though we all have suffered from COVID-19 pandemic, I think hopefully economy of Indonesia will stay in a good condition, hopefully not so severe condition. Okay, next. That's why I want to present first before brothers Aun, because I will start with the very beginning, the definition of the suku itself. In Erlangga, because we already more than 10 years have Islamic Economic Department, suku is a term that very popular. But for some countries that I have been visited before, sometimes suku still not so clear. What is it? What is suku? Is it same with the Islamic bond that usually written in a textbook, in the references? In the Western books, they said suku is Islamic bond. Is it true? Is it the same? We will discuss about that. So first, by definition, suku or sovereign suku, I talk about sovereign suku, definitely part of the suku. There are several kinds of suku. One of them is sovereign suku. Sovereign suku is state securities that are issued by government based on Sharia principle as a certificate for participation in suku or SBSN. SBSN is bahasa Indonesia of suku, surat berharga syariah nasional, aset, either in rupiah or in foreign currency. What for? Government issue suku. This is the goals. The goals is to finance for APBN. APBN is a national budget, and another source of APBN, another source of national budget, and also a source funding to build some project, usually big project who need a lot of money, of course, and to develop Islamic financial system in Indonesia. Until now, even though more than 40 years, I think Islamic finance, Islamic banking in Indonesia exists, but not so many Islamic finance instruments exist. So sovereign suku is very help to develop Islamic financial system in Indonesia. Some advantages to issue sovereign suku is to as a national budget source of financing diversification, and also financing government project, as I mentioned before. And of course, optimizing utilization of state-owned assets. So some asset owned by a government usually idle capacity, so we can utilize more through suku. How? We will talk later. And to diversify investment instrument alternative, yeah, and develop Islamic capital market, provide suku benchmark, and expand investor basis. Why I put provide suku benchmark here? Because there are so many kind of suku, and as a sovereign suku, as a government suku, sovereign suku is a benchmark for other sovereign, like other securities issued by the government, by the central bank, something like that. Okay, next. This is the differences. In terms of issuer, no different. Sukuk and bond can be issued by government, can be issued by the corporation, by other institution. And in terms of instrument property, is sukuk ownership or participation certificate to a certain asset, while bond is debt certificate. So this is the biggest, the one of the biggest differences between sukuk and bond. One is a ownership of participation of asset, and the other one, the bond, is the debt security certificate. Okay, and the return is how we call it. It can be fee, can be profit sharing, can be margin. Why is that? Because it depends on the contract behind. Every sukuk have a certain contract. If the contract is a ijara or leasing, we can say it's a fee, the return. If a profit sharing participation between two investors, it can be profit sharing, or it can be margin if murabaha or buying a sales contract. While in bond, we can say the return earned by the investor is the interest or coupon and capital gain when they sell their bond and they have a higher price of their bond. Okay, maturity period is could be short and intermediate long, and underlying asset. And this is also the main character of the sukuk. It should be have an underlying asset. It is obligatory. If the underlying asset is not there, so it is not sukuk. It is bond, yeah, because bond not obligatory to have underlying asset. And another one is the stakeholder. A stakeholder of the sukuk can be obligor or initiator, or in the sovereign sukuk is a government, and then SPV, special purpose vehicle, and then investor or trustee. In bond, we call it obligator, issuer, and investor. While the price is the same, market price, and the investor is in sukuk, like other investment in Islamic finance, it can be Islamic or conventional investor, Muslim or non-Muslim, all are free to buy, to invest. While the bond only can buy, should be by the conventional investor, because if we believe that in bond there are interest, and interest is part of the riba, and riba is haram. So that's also another main differences between sukuk and bond. And the other one is principal payment, bullet or amortization, same with bond. And fund usage, it should be Sharia compliant. Again, this is the highlight differences between sukuk and bond. In sukuk, it should be Sharia compliant, while in bond, there is nothing to do with Sharia compliant, of course. Next. And what is the underlying asset of the sovereign sukuk? It can be state-owned asset, SOA, we call it. It can be land owned by the government, and building, and purchased or obtained under the state budget or other legitimate sources, and also subject to the parliament approval. So government cannot just ask one of them of their asset can be underlying asset of the sukuk. It should be subject the parliament approval. So it's also a little bit tricky in this case, yeah, because sometimes the parliament have long process and then end up with they didn't agree, something like that. And it also can be in Hajj services procurement, land and air transportation. It can be the underlying asset in Hajj service procurement, and accommodation or housing, and logistic, catering, health, while they are doing Hajj in Makkah. And financing project or government activities also can be underlying asset. Government activities allocated in state budget, infrastructure project, procurement of goods, and also services. That's all underlying asset, usually can be used by the sovereign sukuk. Okay, next. Yeah, this is some detail about the underlying asset. Of course, it should have economic value. It could condition or feasible listed in the document administration, not in the main weaponry system, not in dispute, not associated with symbol of statehood. Of course, we cannot run our palace like that because it's a symbol of the statehood, and also not being used as another underlying asset in another contract. I think that's a condition of SOA, state-owned asset. Yes. Next. Well, this is the milestone of Sukuk Negara. Since last 12 years ago, we started in 2008 and until today. There are quite many type of Sukuk have been issued by our government. From very beginning in 2008, we can see here, there are the very first Sukuk Negara or sovereign Sukuk. We call it Sukuk Negara. So Sukuk Negara is the name of the certificate. Yeah, even though in Bahasa Indonesia the same. This is in English we call it a sovereign Sukuk, but Sukuk Negara is the name of the certificate. IFR, a debut issuance in 2009, and then there are more. There are retail Sukuk, which is very famous in Indonesia until now. We can got a lot of source of fund from the retail Sukuk. And global Sukuk, we call it SNI, and hedge fund Sukuk, auction of Sukuk Negara, it also happened in 2008. What else? In 2010, in 2012, there is a special one, green shoe option. And then in 2013, debut for project financing Sukuk. This is very interesting. While we can build everything, literally, by issuing project financing Sukuk. Even though government maybe don't have enough fund to build that project, then they come up with this project-based Sukuk. Then it is easier to get fund from the Sukuk issuance, comparing to have a debt or a loan from other countries like we did before. And in 2014, introducing Wakalah Sukuk, we have so many Wakalah Sukuk.
Can you increase your speaker because suddenly decrease?
Oh, why? I did nothing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Sulis. And in 2016, Dual Trans Global Sukuk, and also debut for Saving Sukuk in 2016. In 2018, we have two kind of Sukuk innovation. We call it a global green Sukuk, which is also quite interesting, especially for millennials, because green Sukuk like green bond, also very interesting for them because we have they have an understanding about how important the green Sukuk and other green term and other green term connected to the environment and so on. And then in 2019, we have green Sukuk retail. So before we have green Sukuk, now we have green Sukuk retail. Of course, with Sukuk retail, like another Sukuk retail in 2009, government can sell easier, and so many investor with a small amount of money, like only 1 juta rupiah, 1 million rupiah, they can buy. So actually, our student also can buy this kind of retail Sukuk. And then the last one is the newest one in 2020. We have Sukuk Link Wakaf. This is quite new, only launched last March. Sukuk Link Wakaf, and first time issuing retail Sukuk buy online. So there are so many innovation and changes through during these 12 years of Sukuk Negara. Next, Ibu. This type of Sukuk Negara, of course, I don't want to read one by one, as of course we will share the PowerPoint to you all, and you can read the detail of every Sukuk Negara I put here: the market, the investor, the issuance method, the tenor, the underlying asset, the contract structure especially, and the tradability of the securities, and the return. This is the most interesting part usually, and also the other features. Yeah, Ibu. Thanks. Okay, now we talk about the contract. One of the example of the contract that used in a suku. We call it ijara, sale, and leaseback suku structure. Maybe this is a little bit tricky to read it, but actually this is very easy. When number one, we can see here, number 1A, sale of asset, government of Indonesia as an obligator or originator. In this case, is Ministry of Finance, MOF, Ministry of Finance, a sale of asset to SPV, okay, special purpose vehicle, as the issuer or trustee of the suku. So the government have the building, let's say, the asset, and then it's because the government need money, the government can sell the building to SPV. 1A. And then 1B, because now SPV have the asset, SPV can issue the suku. An investor can buy the suku, right? 1C. 1C proceed pembayaran, oh, sorry in bahasa, proceed they pay to the government, to the SPV, the asset, okay? And then that's 1C. And then number 2, where is number 2? Actually, next, we can also next, Ibu Dina. Here, number 2A, list of suku negara asset to government to be used in governmentally daily operation. So after sale, they list the same building again to use day by day as operational, as a daily operation for the government. So government still can use the building, but the government got the money because the government sell it at first, right? And the maturity date, number 2B, a return or ujroh, a payment of suku negara asset leased by government as lessee to suku negara holder as lessor via payment agent. So because the government lease the building, and then the government will pay every month, let's say, and the SPV will again pay the monthly payment to the investor, okay? And lastly, number 3, suku negara maturity. Suku negara purchased by government from suku negara holder via suku negara issuer company with buy contract purchase. And 4AB, payment on suku negara purchased by government to suku negara holder via payment agent as suku negara settlement. And number 5, suku negara maturities. I think it's the most simple thing. Negara or government have the building, negara need money, they sell it, they got the money, and then they rent it, and lastly they buy back again the building. I think it's quite interesting idea of the suku that we can do. So negara government have the fresh money from the suku. Next. Next is another type of structure of the suku. Of course, there are so many structure of the suku that I'm not read one by one. I believe I will take a lot of time, but I want to share to explain in the short way. The first example before is government has the building already, has an asset. But here, how about if the government don't have the asset, but the government need the asset, need the building, but have no money? In the last time, when we don't know suku, government come to other country, come to the IMF, ask for the debt, ask for the money, and pay the interest, and so on and so forth. While as we know, there are also a political interest that sometimes or mostly give disadvantages for Indonesia. But through suku ismun, Indonesia can have the money from its own people. And of course, also if they sell the suku to other country, of course, they also can, government also can earn money from other country. But this is not debt. This is not, but this is investment, something like that. This is a ijara asset to be leased. So government don't have the asset, let's say building, don't have the building, but actually government need a building, but don't have money, okay? And so government can lease order to SPV, number 1. Maybe in the next, Budina, next is easier, I think. And number 1 is lease order from a government of Indonesia to the SPV on specified asset, let's say the building. The Ijara asset consists of infrastructure project and land or building. And then SPV appoint government as wakil, on project construction. So government can construct by itself with the specification of the building. And then sale of state-owned asset from government of Indonesia to SPV. After build it, and then sell it again to SPV. Because now SPV have the asset as an underlying asset, then SPV issue the suku. And suku by the investor, and then building lease by the government again. So it is a little bit, maybe for the beginner, quite little bit need a couple time to understand. But I think it is very genius ideas where Indonesia, where maybe have a building or not have building, but finally at the end of the day, the government of Indonesia have the money, fresh money from the suku issuance. I think that's the idea, the short story of this 4 quite long and detailed suku contract. Okay, we can talk more about it if you need to discuss, or also can read again later after this seminar, and because we will share this PowerPoint. Next, Budina. Okay. As we can see here, suku negara total issuance is increasing tremendously from first time in 2008 until July, 2nd of July this year, 2020. Suku negara total issuance since 2008 is 1,467 trillion rupiah. But total outstanding is 902.23 trillion IDR, Indonesian rupiah. The denomination is, some of them are in IDR, Indonesian rupiah, mostly in the lower distribution by currency. We can see 83% issue in Indonesia rupiah, and only 17% issue in US dollar. In terms of issuance method, we can see 55% of it through auction, and then by book building, 32%, and then 13% is by private placement, quite high for by private placement, 13%. Distribution by series, we can see here, the highest is PBS, and then SNI, SPNS, SR, and so on. Again, we can check later on every type of this in the previous presentation. Next, Ibu, maybe we no need that detail. I'm run out of time. Okay. Sovereign Suku Innovation Program in Indonesia. I can say that we have recently we have four type of Sovereign Suku Innovation Program. The first one is a project-based suku. As I mentioned before, Sovereign Suku Immonef, online application system for management of project financing suku performance, used for reporting, monitoring, and fill-in special account of online sovereign suku project. And Green Suku, underlying asset is environmental preservation, the first green suku issuance in the world. And for online retail suku, online sales mechanism for retail suku, I remember first time I bought suku is still manual. I come to the bank and make a order, but now I can do online to buy suku, retail suku. And then cash wakaf link suku, the recent one is distribution return for social activities. This is also very interesting. While we have so many social problems in Indonesia, we can solve it with the cash wakaf link suku, because distribution return from social activities, including social infrastructure as wakaf asset, and 100% repayment for investor or wakif. Okay, next. Lastly, I think we still have one. Yes. Allocation of government sukuk fund. We can see here from 2013 until 2020. This is very interesting. in the government of Indonesia do a lot of things about the Sukuk Fund. Even though by percentage we still number 4, the biggest suku issuing country. After, of course, number 1 in Malaysia, I think still Malaysia is a champion, and then Saudi Arabia, and then UAE, or vice versa, UAE first, and then Saudi Arabia, and then Indonesia. But we already done so many things. Like we can see here, road and bridges. We already built by Sukuk Fund in 30 provinces all across Indonesia. Development and revitalization Hajj boarding house and the Center of Hajj and Umrah services in 74 locations. Great. Because every year in Indonesia send Hajj, the biggest group all around the world. So government need to give better service for them. And then development of 260, almost 300 Islamic school. And development and rehabilitation of KUA, Kantor Urusan Agama, religion officer in the district, in the kecamatan, in the small area, almost 1,000 places all across Indonesia. And the other one is also the railways. The railways built in Java, Sumatra, Sulawesi Island. We can say double track Manggarai Bekasi, double track Cirebon Kroya, elevated Kuala Namu Medan are all built with the Sukuk Fund. This is actually a very long dream of Indonesia to have double track railways, because since Dutch colonial era, we only have single railways, it's very ancient, and now we have a double track, so we can use more the train to go to other places, especially in Java Island. And another project is a water resources, dam, irrigation, provision and management groundwater, almost 500 project, and development and construction, college building in 86 universities. Unfortunately, Airlangga is not here yet, Pak Sulis. Maybe next time we can ask the budget from Sukuk Fund because IPB, ITERA, ITK, UNSUD, Surakarta, and other university already have Sukuk Fund to build and develop their building, college building. And
sure.
last, Amin. And lastly, below we can see here development of 13 national park, Baluran, Gunung Gede, Pangrango, and Suaka Paru, and so on, and development 7 laboratories as well. So we can see here Sukuk Fund can be used for so many things, almost everything that these countries need. So it's very important to push more our government to develop other Sukuk Fund. Next. Masih ada satu. This is one of the bridge in Jayapura, Irian Jaya, very far away from here. Maybe almost going to India or Pakistan to go to Irian Jaya. This is far away. And majority people are not Muslim, but the bridge built from Sukuk. Excellent. Next. I think this is last, after this last one. Green Sukuk issuance. This is one of funding instrument in Indonesia to support green project and contribute to mitigation and adaptation climate change programs in order to reach SDGs. 9 eligible green sectors. What is the sector? We can see here the dark green is renewable energy. So the Sukuk Fund can be used for any project who related to renewable energy, or resilience climate change for highly vulnerable areas and sectors, risk reduction. And then medium dark green, we call it, is a sustainable transportation like railways, as I mentioned. And then green tourism is also something new that very popular now in Indonesia, because we have so many areas that we can conclude as a green tourism. And sustainable agriculture, waste to energy and waste management. And light to medium green is energy efficiency and sustainable management of natural resources. And last one is for green building. We can see here, first in 2018, we have Green Sukuk, and also in 2019 and 2020. The yield increasing from 18 to 19, but unfortunately, I think because of the COVID pandemic, the yield of the green suku unfortunately decreasing to 0.3% only. Okay, next, Ibu. Wakafling suku is very now is very popular as well, even though it's very quite new since last March, issues by the government. We call it SW001, SW001, Wakafling Suku Series 1. And then the nominal issuance is 50.8 billion Indonesian rupiah. And contract structure is wakala. So wakala is very a simple contract structure. Tradability, unfortunately not tradable. And yield is quite high, 6.15% with a fixed coupon 5% per annum. And maturity March 10th, 2025. So it's 5 years tenor. Yeah? Private placement is by Badan Wakaf Indonesia. And fundraiser in 2 years. Majority investor are institutional investor, and individual wakaf participation is about not so many, only less than 1%. Next. The advantage of kas wakafling suku is facilitated for wakif, so it can be used for productive activities. As we know, the fund of wakaf usually idle. And so wakafling suku, especially the cash wakafling suku is very interesting to apply. So the fund from the wakaf not idle anymore. I think just to summarize all this picture. Next, Ibu. I think that's all. Okay, last one, I think. The potential of kas wakafling suku program. As you can see here, this is only the example. Of course, we can apply it in any other area as well. From free health facilities for du'afa, from social infrastructure development, endowment fund development for social institution, CSR fund development for social activities, produce idle land for livestock and plantation. As I think Pak Kader, Professor Raditya have the number about the idle land in Indonesia, wakaf who form of idle land in Indonesia. So this is very challenging, I think, a product of suku, kas wakafling suku. Also, it can be used for free health services and microfinance empowerment, MKM empowerment, and free Umrah program for Quran teachers in remote places. This is only the example. Of course, again, we can put some more. I think that's all. Budina, ada lagi? Thank you very much. I'm very sorry that I took a lot of time of you. I'm also eager to hear from you. Pak Sulistya, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nisful, for your excellent presentation. From her presentation, we learned that suku has developed a very wide structure in Indonesia, and I believe in other countries also. So the development of the suku is very fast, but I believe also we still have room for further innovation. Yeah, and before I move to the second speaker, I want to remind to all participants, you may ask to the presenter to the Q&A room with the following format. I'll first share the format. Yeah, very simple format. So you can ask about the question is addressed to the Dr. Aun or Dr. Nisful or both, and also you can put your name and your affiliation. I hope you can write a very short question so we can have enough time to discuss. Okay, we move to the second presenter. We have an excellent presenter, Dr. Aun. Yeah, I also introduce him. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, Dr. Aun is Associate Professor at Sulaiman Daud School of Business Lahore University of Management Sciences, Pakistan. He is a PhD holder for International Center for Education in Islamic Finance, Malaysia. We have very good memories when we pursue our PhD there, and also a master holder from National University of Science and Technology, Pakistan. Today, he will discuss about the stimulating economic growth through sovereign sukuk, a potential for infrastructural risk sharing project. This is very interesting topic, especially if we relate this topic with the strategy of economic recovery after pandemic COVID-19 ends, because we now in the suffer our economics, our financial activities is suffer with the pandemic, and hopefully sukuk is the one of the exit way to recover our economic condition. Okay, so without any delay, I invite Dr. Aun to give lecturing. Now, Dr. Aun, time is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. All right. So, Assalamu alaikum. First of all, thank you very much to Universitas Airlangga, Dean Professor Dian Gustia. Thank you very much. Professor Raditya Sukarna, Professor Nisful, Dr. Sulistia, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. And the Universitas Airlangga is one of the nicest places and one of the I've ever been, and some of my most closest friends are there. So thank you for this opportunity. What I will try to keep it short, within 20-25 minutes, so we have some time for any concerns or any questions, any feedback that we may have. So how we will just go about it is, so I will just, Dr. Nisful has talked about some of the innovations in that have happened in the Indonesian sukuk market, and in my personal opinion, I may be wrong, as far as I've seen and I've read about the sukuk markets across the world, Indonesia is one of the most innovative markets. They have been at the forefront of innovation in sukuk. For example, even 10 years ago, when the first time the retail sukuk came out of Indonesia, that was ahead of its time, and no other country has been able to replicate it, the success that Indonesian retail sukuk has been able to do. And then even in terms of green sukuk, in terms of infrastructure related sukuks, Indonesia has been amongst the countries which has been at the leaders. Now, in my discussion, what I will do is I will just take one step back first and discuss why even are we talking about sukuks, and why is it even important to discuss? Because sukuks essentially is a form of government raising money. So why do they even need it, and what are the implications? Then following that, I will come on to the main core, which Dr. Sulistia had mentioned about, the risk sharing based innovative sukuk, which is the core of my topic. So it's more of a discussion and of a potential innovation as a case study, which is being discussed and deliberated for the last few years. Then considering we are going through a pandemic, I've added a couple of more slides which talk about how the pandemic and COVID-19 is pushing the sukuk industry to think out of the box. And then definitely Professor Nisful and myself will be available for Q&A. Now, all of us talk about the fact that Islamic finance assets have crossed over $2 trillion, and we will be crossing over $3 trillion in the next 2 to 3 years. The $2 trillion US sounds a huge number, but when we look at it in the global context, that is just 1 to 1.5% of the total global financial system. So while $2 trillion is a huge number, but in reference to the global situation, we still have a long way to go, which is good because it actually gives us or shows us that there is so much more room for this industry to grow. The sky is the limit. We are not sitting in an industry or in a sector which is saturated because we're 1%. There's another 99% of the financial system that we have the potential to grow in. But a concerning part is that heavily indebted poor countries is a classification of the World Bank and IMF. And they rate all countries across the world on that. Unfortunately, 19 of those 39 heavily indebted poor countries are part of the Islamic countries, and they're part of the OIC. Now, why I wanted to highlight that is that while we talk about such a large Islamic financial industry and Islamic Muslim majority countries doing so well, we also need to realize that there are major chunks of Muslim countries which are in very difficult financial and fiscal situation. Now, what happens is that these countries which are heavily indebted, they have to rely on loans and financing from international agencies, World Bank, IMF, Paris Club, bilateral loans to support and survive. Now, there are two problems with that. One, naturally, as the standard happens, if your credit rating goes down, the interest rates go up. So with these heavily indebted poor countries, the interest rates on their financing and borrowing is massive, is very high. Then the other issue is the liability dollarization. I'll come to that in 2 minutes. Now, why are the countries even borrowing? These heavily indebted poor countries, or even countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan, all of the countries, they do borrow. So they borrow primarily for two reasons. One is the infrastructural development, which Professor Nisful had highlighted as well, that most of the Indonesian borrowing has focused on infrastructural development, and they've successfully been able to build road networks, bridges, rail, and that's infrastructure. If the government does not have the money, they have to borrow for that. And the second reason for borrowing by a lot of governments is for fiscal space, basically for spending on social welfare projects for the citizens, or even to pay the government's bills, government salaries. Like in Pakistan, one of our biggest expenses, like the federal government has a budget of around 500 billion Pakistani rupee. Out of that 500 billion Pakistani rupee, 460 billion rupee is the budget for pension holders of the federal government. So even there are situations and there are times when country has to borrow just to meet their requirements of salaries, pensions, and other operating expenses. Now, the liability dollarization, as I just mentioned, now the liability dollarization in very simple terms is, for example, if we take the case of Indonesia, the Indonesian government's main revenue is naturally tax revenue that they get. They earn in Indonesian rupiah, and they spend in Indonesian rupiah. But if the Indonesian government borrows, the international loans will all be in dollars, which essentially means that when they have to pay back, they have to pay back in terms of dollar. Now, if it's a 5-year loan and the Indonesian government, when it borrowed $1 was, let's say, 10,000 Indonesian rupiah, if they have to repay it now, it is, if I remember correctly, Professor Nisful has talked about 14,000 Indonesian rupiah, around that, right? So the liability dollarization, that all your liabilities are in dollars, but what you earn is in Indonesian rupiah. And that creates a major issue, especially when the currency is not stable. And that is the case with most of the developing countries across the world that their exchange rates are not stable. Now, with that, what happens is when an economic crisis hits, uh, the first thing which you see, and especially in case of Pakistan, in case of Indonesia, all of us have seen that whenever the economic crisis is hit, the exchange rates have taken a massive hit. Exchange, the local currency has depreciated drastically, which basically means that your payments or your loan repayments suddenly increases just because you have to pay it back in dollars. Now, if that happens, if the economic crisis hits, the country has an option either to default. If it defaults, it means it is out of the global debt markets for a long time. Uh, Second is renegotiate and seek restructuring. Again, it has the same consequences. And the third option is to take deep reaching austerity programs, which means cutting down on a lot of government spending. And usually all of that government spending which gets cut down is the social related government spending. Basically the government spending on education, healthcare, on basically things which are essential for the society and the citizens at large. None of these three options has any silver lining to it. The worst part is who gets affected the most is the lowest strata of income. If the government has to cut back on its health programs and on its education program, the people who are in the lower bracket of income, they're the ones who get affected the worst. Two, what it does is it creates intergenerational debt, which is primarily that I borrow it today, I use it to fund my requirements today, but essentially who would pay? The generation which comes after me. So we are talking about government debts are not for 6 months or 1 year, they're normally long term. So one government borrows it, and the ones who are coming after that, or the generation who comes after that, ends up paying for it. So these are the major challenges. Now, one of the ideas which has been under discussion for quite some time, around 4 or 5 years, or actually slightly more than that, is a quasi Sukuk equity instrument, where the payoffs or the returns are directly tied to the economic growth. Essentially, it's a Sukuk which is equity in nature, and the underlying business is the economy of the country. So the idea is that the government issues a Sukuk and says, if our economy grows by 10%, the return it would be 10%. Or if it goes by 1%, the return would be 1%. Why? Because the Sukuk investors essentially become a partner with the government with the underlying asset as the total economy of the country, or as the global economy. Now, why it's called why we think it's more of an equity in nature instrument? One, they take equity stake in the country as a whole. Two, it can be in Sukuks, in the traditional Sukuks that we have now, there is always a maturity. There is always a concept of after 5 years, the repayment will happen. This kind of instrument can actually be listed on a stock exchange, or can be listed on an exchange where it can be traded. So there does not need to be a fixed maturity date. It's a possibility. Now, the idea is it unique to Islamic finance? No, it's not. We've only started talking about it within Islamic finance and Sukuk 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but it has been actually been implemented in global. It was done in early 1990s in Argentina. Argentinian economy was collapsed, and it had massive loans from the IMF. And IMF came back. The restructuring happened on the concept of GDP bonds, which was if the Argentinian economy starts improving, the bondholders will get the money. If it doesn't improve next year, they wouldn't get any return. Now, what it does is it gives the government some room to maneuver. Because right now, the major challenge is whether the economy is good or bad, you still have to pay off your debt. We're looking at the current times. In the pandemic, every single country's economy has shrunk. The government revenues have shrunk. But that doesn't mean that the government can defer its payments on its liabilities. They still have to pay for it. So a traditional bond instrument or a traditional Sukuk instrument has that limitation that your repayments are fixed. Our repayments are the time, you can't delay them. But what we are proposing is that if it's structured in a musharaka manner, similar to an equity instrument, what happens is when times are good, you pay a dividend kind of return. If the times are not good, there is no repayment compulsion on it. The first question that gets asked is, are investors going to invest in it? Our answer to that is the investors will invest. The investors are already exposed, global investors are already exposed to the economic ups and downs of the countries where they lend to. Yes, since they are normally, the traditional loans are normally guaranteed by assets or some collateral, but there's always a possibility of defaults. What this GDP-linked Sukuk or sovereign paper offers to them is that while they are exposed to those risks, but if things start becoming good for the country, the returns for the investors will increase. The major challenge then is the risk, the diversification. If Indonesia does it alone, or if Pakistan does it alone, or if India does it alone, or Malaysia does it alone, this might not work. But a larger set of countries, if they do it, if they all issue these kind of instruments, what it would do for the investors is it would provide them diversification opportunities. If you look at the global economic cycles, we have never faced a cycle in history, and probably will never, where all countries are either improving or all countries are in a recession. There are always times when some countries are in an economic boom, some are in an economic recession. If you look at back the history, the 1990s, the ASEAN financial crisis, economic crisis, when the ASEAN economies were in a recession, the Latin American countries, Brazil, Mexico, they were posting growth of 9 to 10% per year. And that's a time when ASEAN countries were going -9, -8% in. Then when we talk about the US economy slowdown, while the US economy was slowing down for the last 2 to 3 years, the Chinese economy was on an upswing. So the idea is that if these kind of instruments exist for multiple countries, as an investor, there is a possibility of creating a diversified portfolio. The question is, why would a company issue that? Now, it's primarily based out of improving risk sharing and allowing the government some room in terms of financial flexibility. Now, a few other things that this kind of instrument does is it can be linked to specific infrastructure projects as well. 2, it will limit the government's ability for excessive borrowing. Now, a major challenge for most of the governments is that they tend to borrow more than they can repay. And especially in times when economy is booming, governments tend to borrow more because it looks like, for example, the economy is growing at 7%. The government thinks, fine, it's growing at 7%, but we can borrow more at 3%. It makes sense. You earn 7%, you pay 3%, you're good. In this kind of an instrument where your repayment is linked to your growth rate as well, it will restrict the government's excessive borrowing. If you're growing at 7%, your economy is growing, GDP is growing at 7%, your repayment will grow at 7% as well, which means governments will tend to not go for excessive borrowings. Another possibility is if it is issued in local currency, it essentially gives the citizens a stake in their own country. It's like you buy equity ownership, or you buy ownership in your country. And when you buy ownership in your country, there's tons of literature. If you own something, you're more careful about it. The whole concept of microfinance in developing countries or in small, basically community-based projects, that works on joint ownership. So when we talk about the fact, the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is one of the major success stories of microfinance, their model is if they go to a community, they say that we will finance this project. If it costs 500 rupees, we'll give 480, but you have to give 20 rupees. The idea is if they own that project, partially even, they're more careful about it. And that's the whole idea which comes here. If when you own a stake in your country's growth, citizens will tend to be more careful about it, or have more ownership and more affiliation to it. Now, so that was the idea about the risk sharing one. Now, that one is still under works and under discussion. But what is done is the recent pandemic has thrown all of the traditional financial systems under question. Capital markets globally have been squeezed, and a lot of people are now talking about innovation and different ideas. With all of that, even the Sukuk numbers have taken a massive hit. If you look at the Sukuk numbers, and these are the ones which have been issued by Standard & Poor, I think it was last month. If you see the global Sukuk issuances had been, or was on the upswing, with in 2019, almost $160 billion of Sukuks being issued worldwide. And then the last two columns are May 2019 and May 2020, which means the first 5 months of 19 and first 5 months of 20. The numbers have gone down, and the decline might just continue for some time. And this is the time when a lot of focus with this pandemic has come to social Sukuk. Even if you look around ourselves, what we notice is that these lockdowns and this health issue has generally made people more cognizant of what is happening around them as a society. Societies have come together to support each other in terms of health, in terms of general income, and whatever they can do that. Now, this is the time where the concept of social Sukuks is what can help. Indonesia has been at the forefront of social Sukuks. The green Sukuks have come out in Indonesia, and in some other countries, they're talking about Sukuks to build hospitals, something similar to what Indonesia had innovated with the concept of Waqf-based Sukuk. So now there are discussions on having Sukuks to fund hospitals, to fund schools, and that is where there seems to be a lot more interest. Now, interestingly, there was an idea which was floated a year ago, but now it has gotten much more focus, and many more people are talking about it, is the one wash Sukuk idea. Now, Red Cross, the International Red Crescent and Red Cross had talked about this. It was in 2019, January, when they talked about the fact that hygiene, so they have this one wash campaign worldwide, which is to promote access to clean water, both for drinking and for health and hygiene. Now, one of the major challenges for most of these international agencies is development agencies, is that they run on donations, and naturally donations are limited. They are unable to scale up drastically. International Committee for Red Crescent and Red Cross had announced that for them, the whole all amount of donations they have, if they want to ensure access to clean water for drinking, they can only fund up to 5% of the world population or the people who require it. Because it's run on donation, they don't have that kind of capacity to scale it up. So they had come up with this idea of a one-wash Sukuk. So what they had said was, in the dark blue, you can see that's the traditional type of donations, that there is a donor who gives it to implementing agency, which is Red Cross in this, and Red Cross goes and works with communities which are at risk, and that's it. So what they had done, what they had proposed was, why don't we add another layer, which is people who want to finance these kind of activities. But so they want to give donations, but they're also willing to finance it. And that is where, so in the light blue box, you can see where they said that we can actually raise money by donations and by investors. And then that would give us a much bigger amount of pool of resources to work with communities. Now, so their idea was that these kind of investors, they want some return. So their argument was, in very simple terms, was like, if a person gives 100 rupees donation, he does not expect anything in return. He just expects blessings from the creator in return. But if you go to him and you say that you've given 100 rupees of donation, why don't you give us 100 more rupees as investment, and we will give it back to you with some profit on it. That person maybe would be interested in that. He might say that, okay, I don't expect a 10% profit as compared to if I was investing in a business. But if you actually approach people to invest in good causes, they are willing to invest. And they had done a survey of it, and they had said that if we can work it out, we can increase the amount of, so basically for every $100 of donation, they said we can actually attract $500 of investors with a much lower profit expectation. So they said that if in the corporate sector, if they invest anywhere else, they expect a 5% return. With Red Cross, they would be wanting or requesting a 2% return because they consider it as an activity or as an investment into the global world and the future of this our world. So they had come up with this proposed structure now, which is being debated, and a lot of people are now thinking about that this might be where we need to focus on. So they have said that the fund, in this case, the fund is the Red Cross Fund, will mobilize resources primarily as a commercial basis from international markets. They said, but one major catch in this was that the international agency will provide some kind of partial guarantee to repay the investors. And now these international agencies can be organizations like UNICEF, World Bank, or one of these, because they said that their idea was that in these kind of projects, there are always possibilities of all the money being spent without any returns, because they're actually welfare projects. So that was their idea. So we'll share the slide. So if you can just go through it. I'm out of time already. I've actually gone above my allocated time. There's just one thing which I would like to highlight here. Now, what is the main challenge where the Sukuk market regulators need to sit down and discuss? The first, the one on the top is the bonds. If anyone wants to issue a bond, this is the process they have to follow. They decide to issue. There are standard documents. You can actually download those documents online, and you fill them in, and you go to the market and you raise money. With Sukuks, it becomes much more complicated. Once you decide to issue, then it's the legal environment. The legal structure in each country and jurisdiction is different. So for an Indonesian company, if they want to issue a Sukuk in Pakistani markets For them, it's a totally different legal system. Then, as compared to back in Indonesia or in Malaysia, even, then the issue is the asset that needs to be underlying structure. Then after that, another challenge comes is the Sharia structuring. The diversity in Sharia opinions across the world in different schools of thought makes it a bit challenging on how you want to place or where you want to market. For example, quite a few Sharia contracts. For example, the option-based, the urban-based contracts, while they are considered as acceptable, or the mutual vad-based contracts are considered acceptable in Malaysian Islamic finance, the moment you come to Pakistan, they're not considered as acceptable. So takaful, Waqf-based takaful is common in Malaysia, and it's acceptable in Malaysia, Indonesia jurisdiction. But the moment you go to Kuwait financial markets, it's not acceptable. So there are those differences of diversity in opinion. So again, if you're talking about a global sukuk issuance, then these kind of challenges come in. So there needs to be, while the capital markets recover in this pandemic, there is a need to resolve some of these issues which essentially make it difficult and complex to issue sukuks in the market. So thank you very much. And my apologies for taking more than I was allowed to.
Okay, thank you very much for your excellent presentation, Dr. Aun. So we have another side of sukuk, yeah, the one of the most important presentation from Dr. Aun is about the musyarakah sukuk. This is about sukuk that have risk sharing in the issuance. So but also he mentioned about the barrier to issue sukuk cross-border countries, because some countries have a different opinion in the Sharia opinion, and also maybe the differences in the legal condition, legal requirement in each country. So this is one of obstacle of the development of sukuk. Yeah, still we have this problem. So we now move to the Q&A. So I hope the presenter to Dr. Aun, also Dr. Nisful, can look at the Q&A room, and we already have some questions from the participants, and I think all the participants can also read the Q&A in the Q&A room, so we can follow. I think the some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. The first question is addressed to Dr. Nisful. I think Dr. Nisful can answer the question. You can choose any question to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Sulis. Thank you to Nabila, who already write it for me as well, for all the question from the participant. Okay, first one. Okay, where is first one? From Nofrisal Usman. The question is, how is the application of Indonesian sukuk? I talk all about application of Indonesian sukuk in my PowerPoint, but in short, I can tell you that application can be in almost all kind of funding. It can be project or others. What kind of project depend of the sukuk. Like as I mentioned before, if cash wakaf link sukuk, it can be to build social activities to funding to funding social activities, to build hospital or free service for the poor, and so on and so forth. So for Nofriza, you can read more in my PowerPoint later. I think the committee will send you all the PowerPoint from me and from Dr. Aoun. And number two, also for me, this is because I'm the first presenter, so the question is mostly for me, Aoun. Yeah. I hope you can add more later on, okay? Yeah. And number two, is UIN Jambi. UIN is University of Islam, University Islam National. Saya harus belajar ini. I have to learn from you, Habibah, UIN Jambi. Yes, you are very sangat teliti, very careful to read my PowerPoint presentation. You asked about, is it okay to using term coupon? Yes, I check. I already write the term coupon, especially for kas wakaf link suku. Yes, it is coupon always associated with interest. Interest is riba and also haram. So I think we borrow a lot of terms from conventional finance. I think sometimes we said Islamic bond, which is it is not bond at all. So I think coupon usually related to the interest and haram, but I think this is only borrow the term. So of course it is not a coupon as in conventional one, but yes, and in suku the yield can be flat. Yeah, so for the one who maybe don't understand much about the Sharia, they think it's just the same with the interest, right? Every month they receive some amount of money, so quite the same with the interest. And also sometimes the officer of the Islamic bank sometimes only borrow the term. It's just like bunga, just like interest. But this is Sharia compliant. Maybe if they give the more detailed explanation, make them more confused. So again, this is not the coupon as we understand in conventional finance. Okay, I think that's for Habibah. Habibah or Habibi? Habibi is my love. And then for Habibur Rahman Unair, Pak Habib is also the expert. You no need to ask actually, but okay, and you are accountant, so the question is a little bit tricky. Who is control the fund allocation from sovereign suku? If you mean who is control sovereign fund for the government, for the issuer of the suku, I think the Ministry of Finance have already the system how to control it, of course. I hope that's what you mean, or we can discuss later. Thank you, Pak Habib. And there is also from BPK. BPK itu bahasa Inggrisnya apa ya? Wah, Andi Astini, Ibu Andi Astini. What thing that must be fulfilled in order to suku to be accepted and demand for, by both domestic and international market? Very good question, Ibu. Right now, I think the suku issue by Indonesian government are highly demanded by market, locally and international market as well. I think some of them that make suku are interested for them. The first one, I think, like all other investor, is the yield. How much money you can get if you invest your money in suku. It's still in the yield. So that's why if we can see, suku is usually higher, give you higher return than other type of investment. And then the second one, I think, is about the purpose of the suku. As I mentioned before, there are so many kind of suku with different purposes. Like cash wakaf link suku, the purposes is usually for the social activities. So the investor who want to contribute more to this sector, maybe they will interested more to buy this kind of suku. But the one who maybe have a what do you call it, kesadaran lebih ya. Aun ini lama di Malaysia, Bu, so we can talk bahasa actually. With Aun. Maybe like millennial, I mentioned before, maybe they attracted to buy green suku. So the type of suku, the purpose of the suku also matter for the investor, and of course the tenor also can be interested for them. The one who don't want to invest more than 1 year, maybe they will buy suku, the short-term suku, right, like retail suku. The other maybe want to higher return, they will choose suku with a long-term tenor. And I think that's all about the suku detail that may be interested by our local and global market. Yeah, Ibu Andi Astini, that's all. I hope it's answered, or we can discuss later again. And then maybe Aun first.
Yeah, okay. You can continue. We move to the Dr. Aun. Yeah,
yes,
there are some question. Yeah, one of them is talk about the common suku in Pakistan also.
Yeah.
So please, Dr. Aun.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. From University of Langa, what is the speciality of Pakistan's Sukuk that distinguishes it from other Sukuks in their other countries? Frankly speaking, very candidly, the Pakistani Sukuks are still very traditional Sukuks, which are based on Ijara-based agreements, which Professor Nisful had talked about. The Pakistani Sukuk market has not innovated a lot as compared to the Indonesian market. The Indonesian Sukuk industry is much more innovative and unique. So I don't think, I may be wrong, I don't think there is any unique factors in the Pakistani Sukuk market, which also links my answer to what Tika Arundina has asked. Liquidity in the Sukuk market, that is one of the major challenges all over the world. The Sukuk issuers are less, and with Islamic banking and Sharia conscious investors increasing, there is not much liquidity, and that's a challenge in Pakistan as well. We had a recent Sukuk issuance, I think it was 2 months ago, 1 month ago, when the Sukuk issuance was oversubscribed by 5 times. And the main reason was that the Islamic banks do not have an option to invest anywhere else other than Sukuks. So when they buy the Sukuks, they just hold it because the investors are just afraid that if they sell their Sukuks, they might not be able to buy more Sukuks, because the Sukuk issuances are not very regular. And that's an issue in most of the developing markets, Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh. I think only the Malaysian Sukuk market and the Bahraini Sukuk market are much more liquid. How to increase that, it just reminds me, on the question of the unique factors about the Pakistani Sukuk market, most of the Pakistani Sukuks are linked, or the underlying asset is, interestingly, airports. And so in Pakistan, Dr. Nisful and Professor Nisful had come to Pakistan. So the Islamabad airport and the Lahore airport are Sukuk, and were based on Sukuk, as well as our one of the motorways. So they are actually mainly government linked projects. Now, coming back to Dr. Tika's question, tax incentive is a major factor, because, and that is how tax incentive, or even for investors, one of the things which is being discussed in Pakistan right now to promote Sukuks is that for individual investors, to give them a tax rebate if they invest in Sukuks. So while companies have a tax incentive to issue sukuk, but even from an investor point of view, so for the how something like how it will work is if I invest in a sukuk as an investment, so for whatever amount I invest in a sukuk every year, that income becomes non-taxable. So automatically, if I was to pay, let's say, 100,000 in tax, but I invested half of my savings in sukuks, my tax payable will reduce. So that is mainly to generate demand and interest from the investors. Because if that is there, then companies will or issuers will move towards issuing sukuk, because that is what investors will be demanding. This was done in Pakistan for mutual funds when we started mutual funds 15 years ago, and it has been very successful. And so now it is being discussed, and almost I think it's towards its finalization, that similar incentive for tax rebates be provided to anyone who invests in sukuks. Yeah.
How about the liquidity issue? Because the sukuk holder tend to hold the sukuk until maturity. So this is one the reason why in some countries the development of sukuk from the investor perspective is not so good, because when the investor buy the sukuk, they tend to hold until the maturity. This is put to the Dr. Niswal also said that.
Yeah, it's true. So the idea is that, or what the discussions I've heard is that we can't force investors to sell or buy and to create liquidity. The governments do not have the capacity, like in like how they've created liquidity in Bahrain is the government issues istisna-based sukuks every 40 days, and because to generate liquidity in the market. So it's more of like treasury bill issuance there. Most of the developing countries do not have, the government does not have that capacity to create liquidity themselves. So the other option is to change the behavior, to create so much demand in the market that because of demand and supply, transactions start happening. So right now it's if I have invested in sukuks, I don't have an incentive to sell it in the market. All right, as an individual investor, I would say I'll just keep it. But if Dr. Sulistya, you come to me in the market and say you're getting 5% return, if you sell it to me, I'll give you 7% return. Basically, the yield to maturity changes. That will push the investors towards that. So the liquidity issue is there. So either the government can create liquidity themselves by being a player in the market, but then being a player in the market requires a lot of financial commitment. Most of the developing countries, government do not have that. Two is to change the market behavior. And that is one possibility. So I'm not saying that this is the right solution, but this is one possibility that is being deliberated upon in my part of the world, that we don't have the financial muscle to create liquidity. Yeah.
Okay, this one question from Dr. Imran Mawardi. This is our colleague. Yeah. This question is both of you. What is the better for government? Borrow from institution like Islamic Development Bank or issue sukuk or bond? Because I know cost of sukuk is higher. This talk about the cost of the sukuk issuance is quite. If we compare with the conventional bond, then it's quite higher. So which one is better? Issue sukuk or borrow from the Islamic bank institution, like IDB, for example?
Yeah. There's no right or wrong answer, one right answer about it. While cost of sukuk is higher, and that is public, everyone knows that. But if we take the example of the retail sukuk that Indonesia has offered, the cost of that sukuk is slightly higher than if Indonesian government had decided to issue a bond or borrow from Islamic Development Bank. But at the same time, the retail sukuk has offered the people a chance to invest their money at a good return, and small investors. even lower middle class, lower income class has the capacity to invest in that. So there is a social benefit of that retail sukuk, which cannot be quantified to compensate for the cost. So the government needs to decide on where, how it wants to use the sukuk. If it is a sukuk, if you're borrowing the money just to finance a project, then simple maths says borrow from Islamic Development Bank or World Bank, since the cost would be low. But if there is a social angle to that sukuk as well, then the whole equation changes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Let's we move to back to the Dr. Nisful. There are some questions still for you.
Yes.
First is this basically this talk about Rafli Nur Farhan. This talk about what the difference is
between green sukuk and
normal sukuk.
Yes. Yes, as I mentioned before, thank you, Rafli, for the question. Yes, there are so many types of sukuk, and one of them, quite recent one, is green sukuk. As I mentioned before, green sukuk is all sukuk where the fund.
Hello, Dr. Nisful, you lost your connection. Okay, okay. We waiting for the Dr. Nisful. Maybe you have a problem with the internet connection. Let's back to Dr. Aun. Talk about we talk about the demand in the international market. Is it sukuk is still in demanding?
Sorry. Yeah. There is a demand because if you notice that even countries which are not Muslim majority populations or organized companies, General Electric US had issued a sukuk a few years ago. Luxembourg has been deliberating on sukuk issuances for some time. Now, there is a demand for sukuks globally, mainly out of the sovereign funds. The Middle Eastern sovereign funds, or Middle Eastern investment funds, they tend to be very focused towards, moving towards Sharia compliance. And that is from where the demand is being generated. So the demand is probably not being generated a lot from the normal small investors, but from large sovereign investment funds. That is from where it is.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have Dr. Nisful back.
Yeah, yes, fair. Okay, Dr. Nisful already back. So
yes. Hello. Okay.
Yes,
thank you.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can answer the next one. Is from Sinta, University Mercu Buana Jakarta. Thank you, Sinta. So definition is certificate of asset ownership, but recognized as a liabilities. Isn't that inconsistency? Very good question, Sinta. I think yes, you are right. The sukuk definition is a certificate of asset ownership. Asset ownership is been the sukuk from the investor perspective, but sukuk as a liabilities is from issuer perspective. So if you want to write it down in the accountant what you call it, from the issuer, for the government of Indonesia who issue sukuk negara, it's recognized as a liabilities because the government of Indonesia have to pay it later in the maturity date, right? But for the buyer, for the investor, sukuk is a certificate of asset of ownership. I think that's a short answer for Sinta from Jakarta. Anyone else? Pak Sulis, that's all I think.
For example, you can, this is from our colleague also, the head of the study program, Islamic study program from Universitas Indonesia, Tika Arundina, talk about the corporate sukuk in Indonesia, because if we compare with the sukuk negara or government sukuk, is corporate is quite left behind. So, any opinion about the corporate sukuk?
I think for Indonesian case, corporate suku, yes, quite left behind. Then government suku or sovereign suku. But actually, corporate suku is the first suku in Indonesia, far before the government suku. Far before government suku. I write it in my dissertation. And then, but I think there is some issues about the suku. Why from the corporate suku is not so popular than the government suku? Is it because of trustworthiness? The buyer of the suku, investor who buys suku, usually the one who need or risk-free person. They don't like to take risks. So from the corporate suku, if they don't know, if they know that the issuance of the suku, the corporate who issue the suku is very well known, very trustworthiness, I think they will buy. But if not, of course, it's riskier than suku negara, than the sovereign suku. I think it's related about the risk, Pak Sulis. I don't know, Brother Aun maybe have another opinion.
Please, Brother Aun.
I think it's a similar, in most of the countries, corporate sukuk was the first. But I think the reason for decline in corporate sukuks is that for the corporate or for a CEO or a manager, it normally doesn't matter if they borrow from a sukuk or from a bond or from a bank. For them, it's a decision of from what is the cheapest source of financing. So that's why one of our colleagues in the chat box had also mentioned that the cost of sukuk is slightly higher than its conventional counterparts, and that arises mainly out of the legal structure. That may be a reason, because we had done a survey in Pakistan a couple of years ago, and well, 1 year, 2 years ago, and we had just asked one question to a lot of managers, that if you can borrow at 5% on a conventional loan, and you're getting 7% from a Sharia compliant solution, what are you going to go for? So interestingly, only 5 to 6% of them said that for their company they would go for 5% conventional loan. But for their personal loan, almost 40% of them said that they will go for the expensive Sharia compliant solution. So for corporates, what I understood out of it was, it doesn't matter if it's conventional or Islamic for majority of the corporates. And with sukuks being slightly higher, the corporate sukuk issuances have declined across the world. It's not an Indonesian specific case or a Malaysian specific case. It's across the world that the corporate sukuks have gone down.
Okay, thank you very much. From maybe from the Q&A. So
yes.
Please. Yes.
Thank you, Pak Sulis. Ibu Yusrida Bernawati from Unair asked about who can buy suku, individual, company. What is it? Individual, company. Why I lost it? Okay, yeah. That's all I can.
Okay, so essentially it depends on the nature of the sukuk. Like the retail sukuks, Indonesian retail sukuks, I think were price denominated in very small amounts, right? Yeah. Generally, while legally speaking, most of the sukuks can be bought by anyone. They are in multiple denominations of 1,000 or 10,000. But practically speaking, normal sukuks, if they're not classified as retail sukuks, they wouldn't be easily accessible to general public. You'll have to go to a broker to buy that sukuk, which would incur more cost. So while legally any sukuk can be bought by anyone, realistically speaking, normally sukuks are bought by large investment companies, banks, corporates, unless they're like the Indonesian retail sukuk, which was open to everyone.
Okay, yes. This one question. This is come from me because I'm studying about the defaulted sukuk. Do you have any, both of you, do you have any information about the defaulted sukuk? This is for the sovereign sukuk that have been defaulted until today. Do you have any information about this?
I think I heard once in Dubai,
Yes.
a couple of years ago, and also in Malaysia, I believe. But in case in Dubai, it was like first suku that we all know about suku, sovereign suku. But then the Abu Dhabi pay all. I heard the Abu Dhabi settle all the obligation, so it's no issue anymore. That's what I know about suku in Dubai and Nahil suku, I think, in Malaysia years ago.
Okay.
I don't know in Pakistan, how in Pakistan.
No, again, mostly with sovereign sukuks or sovereign government-linked companies, the governments bail them out. Dr. Nisful, the Dubai one, I think, was the Dubai World Sukuk.
Yes, yes.
Yes, again, which was bailed out by Abu Dhabi. In Pakistan, we have had near defaults, but again, the government, because they were government-linked companies, they were paid off by the government. So I don't think a sovereign. There has been corporate sukuk defaults have happened in the world. There's an East Cameroon sukuk, East something default. There's a Dana Gas sukuk default. In Pakistan, there was a Lucky Gold Star sukuk default. So corporate sukuk defaults have happened. But I don't think there is any sovereign sukuk which defaulted and went into legal bankruptcy. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think both of you that sovereign sukuk has less risk compared to the conventional bond? If you look at the structure, we have underlying asset and so on. So, do you think this is you have less risk here compared to the conventional bond?
For me, yes.
Yeah.
Sovereign suku, I can say it's risk-free because it's owned by the government, unlike the corporate suku. Bond, which one of bond? If bond is a zero coupon bond or other coupon the issue by the government, I think it's also less risky. But generally speaking, suku is much safer, much less risky because the one character about the suku is underlying asset, because there is an underlying asset. I think almost all, I can say almost all the project under the suku is quite safe.
How about you?
Of course, we need to see the detail out of the contract.
Yes.
Okay, please, Dr. Raun.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Nisful. With the underlying asset, the sukuk becomes very much immune to any default. But I think one thing is the nature of asset, because there was a sukuk issued in one of the African countries, North African countries, where the underlying asset is the presidential palace. So while legally it is covered, but in reality, I don't think if the government defaults, they would let anyone take over the presidential palace.
Yeah.
So while the real asset is there, I think the nature of the real asset matters.
Yeah.
To be practical, but in most of the cases, legally speaking, yes, they are secured, and they're as compared to their conventional bond.
Okay, thank you. Because we also talk about the type of sukuk, whether the sukuk is asset-based or asset-backed. This is the another issue we need to assess. Maybe we will discuss about the risk of sukuk in another seminar. Yeah, we talk about. Okay, so yes.
Maybe last one question from our brother from University of Kashmir.
Oh, please, okay.
For on.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, I apologize. I did not see. is there any other alternative for Sukuk where Islamic financial services are not allowed to operate like in India? Yeah. Um, I'm not sure, to be very honest with you. I I think probably the cooperative structure, which is I think already being used in Indonesia in some in India, sorry, in some manner, that may be used, but to be very honest, I can't say anything with surety about it. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, same with me.
Okay.
You.
Yeah. So still any question from maybe I also missed to read the question. The
I think
committee
that's
can
all.
answer. Oh, that's all. Okay.
It's 3 o'clock already, 2 hours already.
Oh yes. Okay.
Usually
Okay.
with 4 or 5 presenter, now only 2.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, but a very interesting discussion about the Suku, and I believe we still have a room for the further innovation on the Suku, and we can learn from the Indonesian experience, Pakistan experience, and also other countries, because I think what the Dr. Nisful and Dr. Aun present about the innovation, especially when we try to recover our economics after COVID pandemic, COVID-19 ends, and we need uh, more innovation, because we will each country will try attract money, attract funding from another country. So if we can offer Sukuk that have the structure in full in the innovation, and also we show the benefit of the investor, and also the benefit from the country who issue the Sukuk. I think this is one of the solution for us come out from the crisis, economic crisis, because of the pandemic, this pandemic. Okay, there is some message before I end of this discussions. Some message from the committee. All of the participants is asked to fulfill the data. The committee will send you email to all the participants who attend this to this webinar, and you required to fulfill the data, and the committee will send you a certificate through your email. So thank you very much for Dr. Au, Dr. Nisful, and all of the participants from the beginning of this discussion until end of this discussion. Is still very interesting to join to discuss, but I'm apologize that we have a limitation of the time, and hopefully SICAM will come again with another and interesting discussion with interest in the excellent and prominent speaker also in the Islamic capital market. And I'm, as a moderator, asking your apologies is any if when I deliver this discussion have any mistake. So I'm thank you very much, and I'm back to the Nabila to further schedule. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for the speaker, Dr. Syed Aun Raza Rizvi and Dr. Nisbah Laila, for giving such informative and interesting presentation, and Dr. Sulistia Rusgianto for moderating the excellent webinar, and also the participants who actively participate in this webinar. Hopefully it brings beneficial for all of us today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we close our webinar today, I would like to inform about the e-certificate, material, YouTube link, and upcoming event that you've been waiting about. All the participants who already joined today will receive a link to fill a data for certificates, which will be sent to your email within a day after this webinar done. The certificate, material, and YouTube link only for the participant who joined today. So don't leave the group early, because there will be exciting upcoming event. Also, the webinar with the topic Hello Innovation, how do we start? The speaker are Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Bator from University Science Islam Malaysia and Dr. Asania Hendratme from Erlangga University Indonesia. Okay, last but not least, please give applause for the speaker, the moderator, and for you all who joined today. I am Nabila Izzatul Muslimah. As the master of the ceremony and also the committee of this program, beg your pardon for the mistake we have made. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Thank you, Nabila.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum.